Ready. Hi, welcome to the March 3rd, 2026 Haldane Board of Education business meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
President Clements?
Here.
Vice President Valentine?
Here.
Trustee Clemenson?
Here.
Trustee Cooper?
Here.
Trustee McNall?
Here.
And Student Member Sanders?
Here.
I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda. All right. So please read the recommended action to approve it.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So our next meeting will be a workshop meeting on Tuesday, March 17th. So 2 weeks from tonight here in the high school library at 7 o'clock. And the workshop topic will be the middle school visit summary and detail report. And that's Sean and I are going to be welcomed by Dr. Selke in middle school tomorrow as the board's annual visit to the middle school. So we're looking forward to that. And with our meeting cancellation recently, we're going to now have the elementary April 7th. Great. So we're hearing lots of opportunities to hear about great things happening in our school. A big thanks to the grounds. I'm sure Dr. will say something, but just, I cannot imagine what it's been like to keep this place running. So thanks very much to everybody and their efforts to do that. This next piece is pretty important. So petitions for people who want to run for the school board are available. So the availability of Board of Education trustee candidate petitions. If you want to run for the school board, you get a petition. You have 25 people at least sign to endorse that you're running. Those petitions and the first campaign expenditure statement are due. They can be collected from the district office, and they are due to the district office on April 20th, 2026. The seat that's open this year is my seat. And so this is an important announcement about this because this will be my last term on the school board. And so we certainly need some folks to step up and run for the school board. Everybody here will be very happy to talk to anyone who's considering or has questions about running for the school board. But yes, we definitely an open seat on the Haldane School Board this year. And then also along with that, I'm announcing on the same day that we vote for our school board trustee. That's also the day in March, the third Tuesday in May, when every year school districts in New York State vote to approve their budgets. And so that's really why I think a lot of people are here, and we're going to get a lot of really good information about that tonight. So those are my comments. I'm going to hand it over to Dr.
Okay. So I'll start just with, Peggy, it's only been a couple months working with you, but the number of years and just the knowledge and wisdom that I know you've provided to the district is invaluable. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. And I'm glad we still have a couple months left together.
Still have
all the good
quite a bit
things.
of time.
Yes. Okay. So I have some amazing, exciting news to finally announce. Our capital project has been approved by the state. So what that means, we'll do a round of applause to start. We can now do the bidding process. And so our construction manager will work to identify who might be able to come and actually do the work. At some point, hopefully sooner than later, we'll be bringing the final people for bid to the board to vote on. But now things will kind of happen rather quickly behind the scenes. So I'm just thrilled to be able to announce that we now have state approval and we can move things forward on that. I know it's been a long time coming and just super excited to see us move on to the next phase.
It has been a long time coming, but we are on schedule.
We are on schedule. Yes. I guess in my head, it feels very long because
Yes.
I was hoping it was much sooner than what we got. But anyway, it's official, it's approved, and more to kind of follow on that as the rest of the year unfolds. Just wanted to give you an update on safety. So as you recall, we had a safety incident in the fall. And what we've done since then is working with Alteris, which is our safety company. Alteris came and did a really comprehensive audit of our systems and of our campus to just identify what's really strong within our safety and where are some areas that maybe we can strengthen. And so we have been able to take a look at the recommendations from Alteris, and there's some things we can take care of within our natural budget this year, and there's other things that we have to plan for. So a couple of things that we're planning for before the end of this school year, so using our current 25-26 budget funds, we are looking at the doors in the gym. I just noticed this when the doors close, there's an interesting way they lock, and it's not the safe isn't up to fire code. So we're going to be able to kind of fix those doors before the end of the school year. We also were looking at just safety and security, and this might make sense more to the students when I talk about this a little bit. Putting a fence up to secure, there's different places near the roof, near the kitchen. Roof access has been perhaps an area that if students wanted to get up onto the roof, it's been a little easier to navigate. And so we're looking to have a gate kind of up there to kind of, for lack of a better word, block access. As I know we've got some chuckles in the back there. So probably some stories or experiences you might have with that. Snow guards at the high school along the student pathway. So maybe some of the students have experienced this, icicles and snow coming down. So just trying to make things a little more safe and secure. There's other pieces to the Alteris audit that we will continue to look at, but those are just a couple pieces that I wanted to update the board and community on. We already heard this, but tomorrow we have the middle school visit, and this is just really a wonderful opportunity. I wish the entire board could come to all three of the buildings, but really nice to have at least a couple board members get into classrooms to look at instruction and also to see in real time programs and resources that you have approved as part of the budget process. And it's also a nice way to highlight student learning. So middle school is happening tomorrow. And then I'll just kind of end with two things related to snow and the calendar. So yes, a big thank you to our buildings and grounds group. They come, they work, endless hours. They're here all hours of the night, especially when we know that we have a storm, and Dave and the crew they do it without complaint. So just kudos and shout out to them. And then just, gratitude and thank you to our students, to our staff, and to our school community, because I know that switching to remote is not easy. And the way our calendar is set up, I'll say it this way, I inherited a calendar where we have 3 snow days, and then we are kind of bound by some pieces in our teacher's contract, and then other ways the state has us count 180 student days. And so the calendar committee met, the board looked at a calendar last meeting. I am bringing that committee back together again, just to rethink a couple of things. One of which is adding a 4th snow day. Of course, now we'll add it and then there won't be any snow next year. But just kind of trying to navigate the student learning experience on what makes the most sense and still following within the guidelines we have to. So I hope to have another draft of the calendar for 26, 27 at the next board meeting, which is March 17th. So, but I do, I've heard from some parents, some community members, some students, staff, like good things about the calendar and not so good things. And so just know that I'm listening to that feedback and trying to make sure we have the most responsive calendar that we possibly can have for next year. And I think that's all for now.
Thanks.
So today was the 3rd virtual day, and I feel like I can speak for most of high school students that there's we kind of know the expectations of it, logging in at the beginning of class and then you go on and just do the assigned work. I don't know what it's like in the middle or elementary school, but so that's been more of a concrete schedule. And then the winter dance was on Friday, and it was well attended, and Haldane Blues Devils performed 3 songs. And then even though our Spirit Week last week leading up to the dance was cut short because of 2 snow days and then a 3-hour delay, there still was Pajama Day on Wednesday, Dress Like a Teacher on Thursday, and Ski Day on Friday. And then spring sports are starting next week. And during the end of March, the week before spring break, the seniors are going to Boston, juniors are going to Washington, D.C., sophomores are going to the Bronx Zoo, and freshmen are going to Broadway. And the ski trip last week was well, or not, it wasn't last week, it was during the break, but was well attended. And lastly, wait, sorry, I can't. Oh, there students, I've heard feedback from high school students that the addition of new electives, I think like Miss Cordero is teaching art history and Mr. McConville is teaching AI and sports. So students are excited and signing up for those new courses. And that's all I have.
Which
That's
teacher
great.
did you dress up as?
What?
Which teacher did you dress up as? Wasn't that one of
Oh,
That, I would love to see that.
I kind of forgot to do.
Oh.
I did the other two.
Oh. What were the two classes? You said AI and sports and what's
And art history. I don't know if that's all of them. I've just like heard that those.
And
ones
that's for when students are
next school year.
Yeah. I would love to take
Because I think Mrs. Cochin in the guidance department has started meeting with folks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great, yes. So, it's very exciting, so to hear from, yes, Ms. Platt and Dr. Duffy about budget planning, 26-27 budget planning. So really, this is where we're hearing really sort of what the superintendent and her team with Ms. Platt have been working on to bring to us. So
Okay.
we're really looking forward to it.
Okay. So welcome again, and it warmed my heart to have students in the audience, and I mean that sincerely. This is such an important part of what our school district does, working through one of our reports, and it's really helpful to continue to receive feedback and have you here to listen as the plans unfold. So thank you all for being here tonight. So to start off, if you've been following the journey this year, some of these slides will look similar. These are our annual budget goals. To start, we always want to stay within the allowable tax levy, and we're going to talk a bit more about that tonight. This second one means quite a bit to me personally in terms of having transparent, comprehensive communication to the community about budget decisions and their impact. And I think that's important because the budget is a big piece of what we do. Always to be aligned with our core missions, belief, and the Haldane essentials. Maintaining a safe and efficient fleet of vehicles for student transportation, and prioritizing operational efficiencies and long-term planning. You'll hear us talk a lot about long-term planning tonight and throughout the budget process. It's definitely an area of opportunity for Haldane and also an area of growth. So we want to continue to look at what we need to focus on each year at a time, but then also where are we thinking through 3 to 5 years out. And so tonight you're going to see three main priorities. And it was important when Catherine and I were working through what the needs are, and I'll just pause for a minute to thank our administrators. They really look at the budget year round. Like some people might think we just think about the budget from December on. We're constantly looking at what our budget is, what our needs are, and trying to be creative within those needs. And so you'll see tonight there's three priorities, and that's kind of done purposely. We're mindful of the capital project impact on the budget. We're mindful of what exactly our needs are and what fits in 26-27. And so really there's three main priorities. The first is transportation. We did have a transportation study done. There were some recommendations that we're working through to see what makes sense to do in 26-27 and what makes sense to do and beyond. And so budget impact specific to transportation, there always is an annual vehicle proposition, and that'll be tax neutral. So that is something that you'll see in the budget this year. And then we've talked a little bit about this already, and the plans will unfold as more presentations evolve, restructuring our transportation department so that we have a little more oversight. So we have a director of facilities and transportation. And if you know anything about having two titles in your title, typically when something happens like snow days or facilities, then most of your time is kind of focused on one area over the other. Not that transportation doesn't have oversight, but we're looking to see with retirement breakage, can we restructure within our staffing to kind of help transportation run a little bit smoother, really to have someone have their eyes on the store on a daily basis. So we'll have more information about that at the next budget meeting, next board meeting. The second one is long-term planning, and this is really important. And it's not to say that Haldane has not been long-term planning, but I'm trying to make it as visible as we can, because we have our typical budget every year. We have a capital project. Many of you in the audience and maybe community members, certainly our board and administrators, everyone was involved in the conversations for the campus master plan that happened a couple years ago. And there were so many needs that were discussed within arts, within athletics, within safety, within curriculum, to name a few. And we have project one of the capital project. That was what was approved, but that's not everything. And so we have to plan for 26, 27. We have to plan for the capital project, but then again, think through what those long-term plans would be for other areas. And so that's what you're going to see as part of the budget this year. And so we want to focus on multi-year planning for arts, athletics, transportation, and safety. And budget impact, there's a couple pieces here that we're recommending to continue to fund the existing reserve for capital projects or capital improvements, to create a separate capital reserve for transportation. And that would also include the zero emission buses law and regulation that's coming into effect. And so while districts are not necessarily having electric buses immediately, we have to plan for it. There's a lot of planning and preparation, and it's very expensive. And so we want to create this separate capital reserve to start funding for the buses. And then the third, and this might be of interest to a couple people in the room, we're looking to use a portion of our existing reserve funds to replace our tennis courts. And for those in the audience, you know this, but for the community perhaps listening or maybe conversation that have taken place, the district has done a lot of work to resurface the courts year after year. We are at the point that the courts need to be replaced. So we are looking to use a portion of our existing reserve funds to replace the 2 tennis courts. So not to build on at the present moment, but to replace the courts that we have. It's an estimate of about $275,000 with also some possible grant funding. So I do thank those in the audience who are helping us with that as well. So this is our second long-term planning, our second priority. And the third is STEAM. And so this is really, really exciting for a lot of us. We are continuing to plan for the new instructional space within the capital project. So just quickly as a reminder, we're going to have a STEAM space at the high school and then also at the main building. So STEAM will really evolve over the next couple of years. And so we're trying to be forward thinking in what that could look like. And so we're looking at reallocating our science department faculty to help expand on the STEAM curriculum. And so budget impact, we're looking to hire a STEAM teacher. And this really is budget neutral because we have a science teacher who's retiring. And so we're going to kind of reestablish what that person will be teaching. We want to redesign core and elective offerings. And this is really exciting too. We heard from Max talking about a couple of electives for next year. And so within STEAM, we're talking through, we already have an engineering class, but we're looking at robotics, construction, perhaps CAD. So there's a lot of electives that can start to be built through this STEAM program. And so also including materials and supplies, that budget increase will be about $10,000. I'm also working with senators to see if there's different grants to also help us within the STEAM piece as well. So more to follow on that as that evolves. And then we also have a couple of enhancements that are going to continue. Again, if you think through a budget a year at a time, but then that long-term planning, we will continue to help support the performing arts, our field trips, our MTSS platform, that's our multi-tiered system of supports, and then our UPK. So these are going to continue within the budget. And then budget enhancements for 26, 27, increasing the athletic budget to fund growing student participation and the rental of portable lights. And so just to pause there for a moment, within conversations, again, a couple years ago with the campus master plan, one of the items among many was talking through lights on the field. And so we are doing some work behind the scenes to determine how much would that cost, what's the feasibility of being able to do this. And all of that work is happening, but we won't be able to have it up and running for 26, 27. So to start thinking through long-term planning, we are going to put into the budget the opportunity to fund or to purchase, rent lights, really, we're not purchasing the lights yet, but to rent lights to be able to offer a game under the lights for every varsity team in the fall and in the spring. So it's a start. It's not the fall lights, but it's a start. And then also increasing special education budget for out-of-district placement. So those are the 3 priorities, and then a couple of enhancements that you're going to hear about as the budget unfolds. Okay, so the next couple slides just talk about enrollment. And so what you'll see here is a reduction in sections in grade 2 and in grade 5. And I appreciate coming into the district in terms of the thoughtful planning that has gone into. We know that our enrollment has been declining and might decline depending upon grades. And so it's how can we reconfigure our staffing and resources to meet the needs of our students. And so this slide you'll see for 26, 27, no numbers for 5th grade because 5th grade will be moving up to the middle school. So that'll be 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then our high school. Okay, so switching gears now, when you build a budget, there's a lot of vocabulary that gets built into the budget, and it can be a little bit confusing at times. Catherine lives it. Most of us go in and out of the vocabulary, but this is something that she lives. And so we've had some good conversations among ourselves, but then also with the board to make sure that we're sharing the appropriate amount of information with the community. And so this is a piece that we want to talk a little bit about. The allowable tax levy, you might have heard of it called that. It's also known as the tax cap or the tax levy limit. This limits the total levy set by the school districts. It's the highest amount of property taxes that a local government or school district can propose without requiring a supermajority, which is 60% of voters, to pass the budget. It's not always 2%, and I think that's a little bit confusing. Sometimes you think, oh, it only can go up to 2%. It really is an 8-step calculation. So I'm going to turn things over to Catherine, and she's going to just really briefly go through what that 8-step calculation is. Okay.
So like Dr. Duffy said, calculating the allowable tax levy limit is an 8-step calculation. And what we always do is we start where we ended last year. So step 1 is just knowing what your prior year tax levy was. And then we move on to the different steps that I'll go through very briefly for you. Step 2 is an allocation called the tax base growth factor. And that's an adjustment for tax-based growth that's given to us each year by the Department of Taxation and Finance. And it represents the percentage increase in the full value of taxable real property due to physical changes such as new constructions, additions, or improvements. It does not include any increases due to market changes or to any reassessments that happen throughout the school year. It's the number that we were given by the Department of Taxation and Finance for 26-27 is 1.0063. So as you can see, that is basically saying that there's very, very little growth in the tax base in the Haldane Central School District. Steps 3 and 7 relate to something called pilots, and pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. They're paid by large industrial development agencies, and they can be very tricky for a school district. And I'm happy to say that Haldane doesn't have any pilots in the district, so we don't have to do anything with steps 3 and 7. And step 4 and 8 is really the lion's share of why the tax levy increases, and that is the capital levy exclusion. The capital levy is the local share for capital payments for facilities, buses, and equipment. And by local share, what that means is it takes the amount of the debt service payment that the district has to pay offset by any state aid that they're receiving for that project. And that is called the local share. It includes debt service, and like I just said, it includes the debt service payments for capital projects and buses, less any building or transportation aid that the district receives related to those projects. And then step 5 is, I think, where everyone hears the 2%, that the property tax cap can only increase by 2%. And that is because there is this factor called the allowable growth factor. And that's the amount by which the school district's property tax levy may increase from one year to the next. And this piece of the calculation is limited to the lesser of 2% or the change in the consumer price index, which measures inflation experienced by consumers. This year for 26-27, the property tax allowable growth factor does remain at 2% because the consumer price index was higher than that. But again, the one thing we need to remember is there are permitted exclusions which impact the actual allowable tax levy limit, which makes it sometimes over the 2%. So for Haldane this year, there's 3 key variables that are impacting our tax levy limit increase. The first is our tax base growth factor, which is the 1.0063, which increases our tax levy limit by $147,496. The allowable growth factor of 2% increases it by another $451,827. And our capital levy exclusions increase it by another $659,960 for an allowable increase to our tax levy limit of $1,295,282. And now I'm just going to show you quickly. You start with your prior year tax levy, multiply it out by your tax base growth factor, which gives you your new levy limit. You back out your previous year's capital levy exclusions to come up with what your starting tax levy limit would be. Then you multiply that by your 2% for the allowable growth factor. And then you get to what your tax levy limit would be. And then you're able to add back in the upcoming year's capital levy exclusions. And that you will see, if you look at step 4 and step 8, the difference between what we have to include next year in 26-27 and what we removed from 25-26 is a pretty significant increase, which is primarily due to the debt service payments for the upcoming capital projects. So that shows us that next year, our maximum allowable levy limit will be $24,707,360. And just to summarize it, we take last year's levy, we calculate our new allowable levy, and that the maximum increase that we can go to remain under the tax levy limit is the $1.2 million, which is a percent increase this year of 5.53%. And that is the maximum we can go to without voter approval in excess of 60%. And then just a note that we want to keep reminding or adding or thinking about is last year the district did pass a budget based on a 2.8% tax levy limit rather than going to the calculated allowable of 3.38%. Just really kind of as a thank you, it was a year we were able to do it. Everyone came out and voted for the project. We knew this tax increase was coming, and we thought that there would be a year where we were able to, defer it just a tiny little bit. But now that we have approval and we're starting to borrow, we don't really have the luxury of being able to do that anymore. And then you wanted to,
Yes.
Okay.
So just a word about the capital project. We wanted to remind the community, this is really not new information. This information on this slide is really what was visibly printed when the community voted onto capital project. And, again, exciting, it passed by nearly 62%. So the first circle talks about the capital reserve, and this was the actual language that the community saw back in November of 24. Haldane will allocate $1 million of voter-approved capital reserve funds to reduce the taxpayer impact of the project. So for 2025, we've had some upfront costs in preparation for the capital projects. And then the local share, and this was really based upon the information that we had at the time, the remaining $27.4 million will be paid over a 6.9% tax increase phased in over a 3-year period beginning in 2026. And so from 2026 to 2028, that's when you're going to see the borrowing and taxpayer impact. And then the state aid piece, which is also very important, Haldane will receive approximately 35% back on all project costs through state building aid, reducing the financial impact. And this again will be phased in following the project completion. So just again, a reminder, it's not new information. This is information that was shared when when the district was highlighting the capital project, when the community voted on it, again, with 62% of our community excited and saying yes to the work to move forward. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I just want to say, we've said before in the meetings, is we did plan on doing this over a 3-year period when we were back in November of 2024, but the timing of the project and the timing of the borrowing shrunk a little bit. So the impact will be felt primarily over a 2-year impact as opposed to 3 years. But after the first 2 years, when the local share we begin to receive more of the local share, it will flatten out the tax impact and should bring some relief to the increase. Okay. So the other pieces that we always talk about is our revenue that we also have besides our tax levy is obviously the most significant piece of our revenue, but we also get state aid. Foundation aid is a large piece of our state aid each year, but it is not increasing it at a rate that is sustainable for the school district. Districts throughout New York continue to lobby for changes to the foundation aid formula to better support annual cost increases and the continuing changes to education that are due to state requirements and community expectations. But for right now, the governor's proposal includes no changes to the foundation aid formula, but it does preserve a guaranteed minimum 1% increase for all districts. And due to our calculations, we will be receiving the 1% increase, but for next year, that amounts to just under $30,000 of increased aid. The next biggest piece of our state aid is our expense-based aid. And this is actual calculations that are based on our school enrollment, as well as our actual expenditures for different services and programs. And we have, our building aid is going up, our transportation aid is going down, BOCES is going down, and our excess cost aid is going up. So we right now have a projected net increase of just over $5,000 in our expense-based aid for next year. And then the executive budget does seek to change the funding of our universal 4-year-old pre-K program. We currently receive an allocation of $5,400 per student. Under the proposed budget, this amount would increase to $10,000 per student. So based on the enrollment that we have of 18 students, which is the maximum number of students that we can currently admit into Haldane by having one section of universal pre-K, that will be a projected increase of $82,800 for next year, which will help to offset the cost of UPK. So our revenue summary for 26-27, if the board approves everything that we're talking about tonight, would be going to the allowable tax levy of $24.7 million. We do expect to receive $4.5 million of state aid. And then we do have an increase next year of our other revenue to $1.7 million. The primary increase to next year's revenue is tuition revenue. I review current tuition for this year. I move out all the graduating seniors. I see who's coming from different districts next year, as well as we do have some students tuitioning into our elementary school in our, self-contained class, special class. So we do anticipate an increase to our other revenue next year. And then we always appropriate $645,000 of fund balance and in this year, $250,000 of reserves. And what that does is it allows us to, if anything unforeseen happens, by allocating it in the budget, it gives us permission to be able to use our reserves for a large expense throughout the year if necessary. And so when that all comes together, the recommended budget for next year is a total of $31,892,876. And then just going through the rest of what is going to happen over the next, or on the budget date, we are looking right now, if again the board approves, to have 5 propositions on the ballot. Proposition 1 is always our school district budget. And again, voters approve the budget, not the tax levy limit. So they will be voting on the $31.8 million. We do anticipate a vehicle purchase. 26-27 is the last year that we're able to buy, unless we are able to receive a waiver from the state, a diesel bus. It is anticipated that we do need to buy one small bus to replace a bus that has to be taken out of service this year. So we do anticipate a tax neutral vehicle purchase. Again, it's tax neutral because as the debt falls off from previous purchases, we only increase the budget or the bond by that amount, so that vehicle purchase does stay tax neutral every year. We are recommending the use of capital reserves to replace the tennis courts. That also is tax neutral. We don't anticipate borrowing anything for that project, as we have the money sitting in a capital reserve account that with voter approval, we would be able to outright purchase or pay for that project. Proposition 4 would be a creation of a separate capital reserve. Again, tax neutral. That would just be if there's any money left at the end of the year with our fund balance, we would want to put it in some into our existing capital reserve And we would like to start a new separate capital reserve for transportation expenses. As Dr. Duffy mentioned, the prospect of going to electric vehicles is daunting, to say the least, with the expense that it is going to cause the district. So the more we can save in advance is the less we would have to borrow for any of those, which again will help in the long run us not have to raise our limit for capital exclusions. And then we were notified by Butterfield Library that they are asking for a slight increase to their library budget again this year. This is not a component of the Haldane budget. There's nothing that we can do about it, and we obviously support our library, but when the library does ask, it's required by us by New York State to put it on our ballot. So you will see a slight increase to the Butterfield Library levy on the ballot in May. And then we'll continue to talk a lot about the budget over the next few months. March 17th, we'll have our first pre-budget hearing. We will have numbers attached to all those propositions and resolutions that we would be having. And then as it continues on, April 7th, we'll know more. Hopefully we'll have the final state aid runs from the state. Last year they didn't come in time, but we're hoping that maybe we'll have them. And then we'll adopt our budget on April 21st. That's the last day we're able to adopt the budget. And then May 5th, we'll have our public hearing and present the budget in the 3-part component, which breaks it down to our administrative component, our program component, and our capital component. And then we will be voting on May 19th. So that was a lot, I'm sure. But
Impressive.
Very
Very comprehensive.
I'm just quick, what's the capital and transportation capital reserve?
Here, can you restate
I
it?
think I was asking what the cap is on that, the transportation reserve.
we can discuss what we want to set that at.
We have options. We haven't made a comment.
Well, we've certainly had, we've had a similar conversation and have seen the slide in this presentation already. And I think we all agree that the easy big takeaway from this is a tax increase between 5% and 6%. And I think even Peggy had mentioned, I thought when we passed the capital project in 24 that we were already in one way or another certifying that increase. And it's important for us to think, and I got to remind myself at the same time that programmatically we're talking about, a number that is in the range of what we would typically be discussing, which is somewhere between 2% and 3%, based on inflation, what we can increase it. And really, we're now codifying and certifying and saying we 24 we decided we were going to build, and now we're finally in the position to finally start paying back that debt service. And it's useful for me, I think, and I think it'll be useful for all of us to discuss, even though we can't and shouldn't be thinking about that increase as divided in a way, it really is in 2 parts in a way.
Yeah.
And that capital versus programmatic distinction is going to be, I think, really key as we do our best to make sure everybody understands the implications. So I appreciate it, and I feel like there's really no easy way to clarify that, and but I appreciate that you included that.
Absolutely.
Because it can't be delineated on the proposition itself, right? It just has to say, so it's all the communication in advance. It was good to see a reminder of the fact, of exactly what we voted for last year, kind of saying, that we're giving the okay for the capital project, but you're not going to feel it in your taxes until 2026. And that is fun. Yeah. So I was curious about the tax-based growth factor only being 1.00 whatever percent. Is that pretty steady through the years? Does it stay that low?
It really does, yes.
Makes sense. And then I'm curious about the Prop 3 for the tennis courts. Do we put on the proposition that that we're budgeting $275,000 of the reserve funds for it? Do we put a number on it on the proposition?
We do have to give an actual number.
Okay, and is that an estimate based on what the full project would cost, or is that what we're thinking we can allocate towards it, regardless of what the total cost would be?
That number, we will obviously look at it one more time as we get closer. We'll ask for another quote, but that is a number that we were given by the construction company, who is on state contract. And it comes highly recommended, and that is the number. We are pursuing, as Dr. Duffy mentioned, some grant funding that would be a reimbursement. But the thing that we have, it's not like they can give us the money in advance and pay it. So we would have to pay in full upfront for the project, and then the grant would reimburse some of those funds.
Reimburse the funds. Okay, great. And one other thing that was mentioned in the Part of the, one of the priorities was increasing funding for special ed placements out of district. Is the reason for that, that there's more students going?
Each year I sit with,
district?
Ms. Erin, I don't know. Dr. McKay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Had a moment of like, what's her last name? But I apologize to her for that. And we look at where we think everyone is. We're right in the middle of annual reviews, and so things are still subject to change. But that takes into account everything we know, and then some allocations for unexpected expenses, because every year we end up with something that happens throughout the year. So we always have to budget a little bit higher than what we know today in order to cover those expenses.
Yeah. There's another way for us to think about that, though, and I'd like us to consider the possibility of using this language, which is that it's really meeting the needs of students. So and I know that's what it is, but I think it really, it's not particular to. I guess what I want to say is that that's the district's priority. That's what we're all committed to doing, is meeting the needs of all of our students. And the cost of meeting those needs may change. The needs of students in a small district can wax and wane, and that's just what we do.
And having them be in a setting that's right for them.
Yeah.
I had a question about the exclusions. I just get a little bit more information. We're gonna get asked about the 5.53%, in the grocery store, on the field. And I just wanna make sure I sort of understand. So the exclusions is what allows us to go above the 2%. So is that mostly debt service payments? Is that related to exclusions? So that's what that is, and that's based on the borrowing that we're doing for the
Right, as well as our current borrowing that we have. We're still paying off the construction of the high school. We do a borrowing every year for the buses. And so even though it's tax neutral and we take on, or we put on what we take off, we still have debt service payments that we pay off each year for that. And we had the 2019 capital referendum. It's lots of different debt service payments. It's not solely the capital project or this capital project, but the increase this year is. And it's primarily because in a few weeks, we're going to be borrowing about $19 million for the construction of and that is working with our construction manager. He has done a projected cash flow for us of the way that the project will take place in the order in which the project will unfold. We will need a significant upfront because the largest piece of it is the addition to the high school, and that is the first piece that's happening. And so we will have our first debt service payment on $19 million come due in 26-27.
And the increase in athletics, fund for the athletics, is that primarily the lights that we're going to rent, or is that a whole bunch of things that you'll let us know about?
It's a few different things. There's a lot of it is the lights. We also have been kind of like, there's been a lot of different teams that have started. There's been like a modified team that we have been funding or fielding, or a JV team. So there's equipment that's associated with them. There's uniforms that's associated with them. Most of our uniforms do get replaced on a 3 to 4 year cycle. And one of the more expensive teams' uniforms do come due in 26-27. So we have to allocate a slight increase for that. It's numerous factors. We also now have an ambulance on standby for every football game, as well as other games that we think is necessary. And that is something that we hadn't been including in the budget in the past. But we are now being charged for those ambulance services, and we absolutely respect that. And we appreciate that they're here helping us at those games. But it's just things like the athletic budget has not been looked at as closely over the last few years as it probably needed to be. And so I worked very closely with Mr. Cunningham to make sure that we really took a look at it this year and got, so we didn't have to make budget transfers or things like that to cover expenses that are necessary.
Thank you.
Couple quick questions on the tennis courts. That 275, you said, okay, we're going to replace, we're just going to kind of put back what exists there, the drainage underneath. So can you just explain two things? Were we talking about totally taking out the courts, fixing underneath it, putting down 2 new courts, resurfacing the courts. And was there a discussion about turning the courts to be able to fit a 3rd court in?
I think maybe that we should have Mr. Cunningham come.
Yeah,
talk
he
about
could,
the
he
project
can
a
give
little
more
bit.
information.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Totally
I think,
understand.
I think I'd be more comfortable having him.
That'd be great.
Maybe we can get him to the next meeting or something to really,
Oh, that would
Because
be good.
I don't have the details other than,
Mhm.
I mean, I have the quote in my office.
Yeah, but no,
but yeah.
right, yeah, I got you.
Right, so we can invite Tom to the next meeting.
Lex, do you have any questions or thoughts?
Not really, I'm just listening.
A lot of information.
Absorbing it all.
A lot of vocabulary, right? Yeah.
Well, so this is the 12th budget presentation that I've sat, the 12th year of budgets that I've sat through. And I have to say, I really appreciate how Catherine laid this out, because even though conceptually I've known both as a professional and a board member for a really long time, the costs are exceeding sort of what we can raise our budget, right? So we know about big drivers like healthcare, retirement. There are many, many years that salaries have gone up greater than than the percentage of tax increases that we've implemented. But when you look at it this way and you realize that by law, we are limited to not the consumer price index, but the lesser of 2% of the consumer price index. And we know that inflation has been a very big deal for many years and continues to be. And we know that the state we fall into the category of districts that are getting the minimum increase in foundation aid, which is 1%. It really shows the constraints that the district is really under. And so, one of the things I've heard people say in the community is like, well, why are taxes, being raised so much when the number of students is decreasing? Well, it's decreasing. It's not decreasing dramatically. I mean, it may, but it hasn't so far. But in a sense, it's almost, thank goodness, honestly, because the extent to which we would have to compromise on student programs would be painful for so many of us. And one of the things that's been so great about this district, and that's been really great about this board for, many different groups of us, is our commitment to really wanting to provide the best opportunities that we can for students, recognizing that we're, in a small district, and I think we do a good job on that. So, there's no doubt about it that, the 5.5 whatever percent feels a little bit shocking, but I it's so important to put it in those, in those contexts. What we're planning to do with the capital project, we've said it a million times, but it is really needed space, like just absolutely space has just been such an issue. So I don't know, I think this presentation is really helpful because it helps me think about how I can talk about it, be really, try to come up with some pithy lines about why it's why everyone should vote yes, even though we can't advocate for it. So anyway.
Just communicate very clearly.
I'll just communicate very clearly. We can't say ask you, we can't tell you how to vote, we can just ask you to vote. So yeah, I think that's a really helpful presentation.
Yeah, well done. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're at the point of our agenda where it's time for the first opportunity for communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. This first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. Anyone who would wish to address the board, we'd ask you to state your name for the record, and then after you speak to just sign in so that we have your contact information in case we would like to follow up with you after the fact. We ask people to keep their remarks to 3 minutes, and we discourage people from from making disparaging remarks or discussing district personnel. Also, the board doesn't engage in dialogue during the public comment session, but please know that we're listening and we typically follow up afterwards. So with that, if anybody has a desire to speak, please come to the podium. That's right, afterward, right here.
It's clear. I'm Maria Elena Hardman, and I have a tennis player who's not here. Actually, she's at rehearsal. But I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration in including the efforts that we have, brought to you in the Capital Reserve, and just thank you for listening to all of our players, our team parents, and the community that has giving us some input about what they wish. So
Great.
just want to say thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellie Dubrow. And I'm Alice Sizemore. And we also want to thank you for all the consideration have you thought about the tennis team?
But it's fun.
Yeah, when making your budgeting, because I know there's a lot to think about. So we're glad that we were heard. And yeah.
We're very grateful for it, especially coming from a tennis player, and I can speak for the whole team that if they could be here, they would, and we just appreciate it very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. It's been great having students. You all can be actively involved in the get out the vote effort. I just want to point out that, the board's making these recommendations, but this is voted on by the public, it will be voted on. So it's our collective responsibility to get out the vote. Yeah, hi.
I'm Katie McInnes. And again, reiterating, thank you for listening, for considering and putting it as a proposition on the ballot. And to that point, as we do have many members here who do want to be involved in helping with the grant options that are outside, we're willing, we're eager, and we want to make it as beneficial for all to offset costs where we can and really just spearhead, just making that point. We look forward working together, hopefully, to come up with the best scenario. And also for that idea of education, which I've gotten from this presentation, I do feel like there is a big disconnect of trying to get that message out. So again, if there is anything that we can collaborate to get the students out there, and there are 18-year-olds who can vote, that we would also really like to help with that effort to educate, and because at the end of the day, if they don't vote yes, then it's a moot point. So just again, really want to express that we are very happy to help in whatever conversations that need to be had to help get the word out and support what's on the ballot. And I had one other thing I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it is.
There's a second comment period, but
You might not want to stay that long.
No, we're excited and very happy to help and move forward. So thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, you want to sign it?
Yeah.
This is case.
All right, so next on the agenda are the administrator reports that we get. Always appreciative of those. Just a few things. I wanted to note in them, reading is a real passion of mine, and teaching reading is a real passion of mine. So seeing in Ms. Jammon's report about the ongoing efforts to roll out the implementation of Benchmark Advance, including at the upper grades, was really great. I know the middle school had is it called Community Read?
Yeah, Wild Robot.
I've always intended to join those. Maybe when I'm not on the board, I'll join. And then also really exciting to see Ms. Sniffen so actively involved in developing and leading professional development for her teachers. That's a great gift to the district. So.
Josh mentioned that as well. I just wanted to, in his about the upcoming superintendent's conference day is going to be focused on how professional development can align better to is it the Haldane Essentials? I'm trying to squint here and read. So, and I appreciate that too. It's always interesting. It's more of a collaborative process. So that's interesting.
I just want to flag something in Ms. Sniffin's report about, it's interesting how the weighting of classes will no longer be occurring going forward, right? I think that's, so no student will be able to get anything higher than 100%, right? I think that's smart because that way students aren't discouraged from taking classes in which they might not be able to get 105 or 110, you know? I think that might have something to do with why certain students pick certain classes. So I think that's really a smart choice.
Oh,
to have things that-
encourage students to take like an art history
the
class
elective
or something.
classes,
That's
yeah.
so great.
Yeah.
Thanks for
You
pointing
know,
that
those students that get 150 out of things, they'll get a little angry though.
What's that?
The students that have a tendency to get 150 on stuff.
Well, it says that in the report that the
Right.
students are sort of pushing back against it. Right?
Yeah, but I think it's actually an example.
Yeah.
I think it's
trade inflation.
There is.
Yeah.
Right?
There is.
Like
So-
100's 100.
I know our interim director of facilities and transportation, and I think his first sentence was, "This is a winter that reminds me of the winters of my youth."
Yes.
But
That's a funny read.
We ended on like, come spring.
Yeah.
Experience has spring.
Which I appreciated.
Yes, that's Dave.
So next on the agenda are the information reports. These are the financial reports that we'll act on at our next business meeting. Next on, after that are the committee minutes from the technology committee. I should know this, but who's it from the technology committee? Yeah, have some people had a chance to go? It's hard to make those
Yeah, that was a
meetings.
harder one, but I did sort of attend virtually, so,
Uh-huh.
and it was a great meeting, and, you know, I think, not surprisingly, and that was indicated here, there was conversation about AI and cybersecurity, and I was curious when I heard that there was an elective about AI in sports that,
Mhm.
you know, as we continue to try to integrate, we are nonetheless sort of, we're going to continue to combat to the best of our ability the use of AI and disinform and, you know,
Mhm.
aid to cheating and whatnot.
Mhm.
I'm always impressed by Leah, so.
Oh, great,
Mhm.
good. Next on the agenda, we begin our consent agendas, and the first is consent agenda for the minutes for our last meeting. May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Right.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next is the consent agenda for personnel. May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
I think we wanted to acknowledge a couple of things here
Yes.
before we voted.
First, would you like to?
Pardon, oh. Was I supposed to do something? Am I forgetting?
No, I can do the,
Yes. go ahead.
yes, okay, so,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. So, very excited. We have Ashley Cortez here with us tonight. And so Ashley is one of our really hardworking teachers at the middle school level, special education, and she is up for tenure. And so we are acknowledging that tonight, and then we'll be inviting her back in June to celebrate with the rest of the crew. So make you blush a little bit, Ashley, it's my job. So my goal as a new superintendent is to get to know all of the teachers and our students, and I really started with our teachers up for tenure. So Ashley was one of the very first lessons that I had the chance to go in and visit. And having been a special education teacher myself, I think my heart is always still just looking at how can we meet the needs of all kids, which is every educator's goal. But what Ashley does in such a beautiful way is the way in which she interacts with students. So whatever the core lesson was, it was an ELA lesson, and they were working on different centers with writer's craft. And the way you spoke to each student, you made them feel seen, valued, and heard. And writing can be tricky for a lot of us, especially for some students who might be struggling. I just thought to myself, if I was in middle school, I would want to be in your class. So I just really appreciated your approach. And then your commitment to the growth mindset. And that's one of our Haldane essentials. And that's tough as an adult to model for kids. It's okay to make mistakes. You were naturally talking about, I think, a story of your own that you wrote and how you weren't really crazy about a part of the story. And you just modeled so beautifully. It's okay to revise and to take a minute and regroup. So I just so appreciated that. And then on top of all the great things you do in the classroom, you're such an active part of our Haldane community, whether you are serving as a coach, going on the ski trip, attending Frost Valley. So you really represent all things Haldane, and it's my absolute honor to know you, and so excited to have you continue on in your career here in Haldane. Yes.
Yeah, and thanks so much to yeah, Haldane, it's so fortunate in that we've been able to attract such phenomenal educators for a number of years now. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. In my professional life, I've traveled to school districts and spent a lot of time in school districts all over the country, and have seen how the teacher shortage is really so detrimental to student learning, and the fact that that is not something that we ever remotely, and it's a big deal in the state, right? But we are really very fortunate that we and work hard to do this, not just fortunate, to attract such great educators. So it's always exciting when someone is recommended for tenure. Oh, so all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next is consent agenda financial. May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Like,
And I think just before we vote on everything here, we want to take the opportunity to thank the Haldane Arts Alliance. So the Haldane Arts Alliance, the way they do their grants is they really do it on a rolling basis. And so we see them a few times over the course of the year. There are several things on here from the Haldane Arts Alliance, and we thank them for their work and support of students. Yeah.
And the Highland Current.
Yeah.
And the Highland Current.
Oh, and the Highland Current.
Yes, I think it's really exciting, number 11 and number 12, talking about the outlook and the opportunity that these kids are going to get to go to Columbia to learn some journalism
Really cool.
skills. It's amazing. I did have some questions about some of the how advisors get approved. So hopefully there's time before this trip that we can come back and talk about that.
Absolutely.
No, it's great. And so, yes, thanks very much to the Current and the Rowe family for their chipping in on this. Maggie, as a journalist, knows much better than me the value of getting to go to Columbia. It is pretty exciting. Yeah, good. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next we have the and actually the change order thing is
Do you want
there.
to talk about that one quickly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, you brought it up, we'll say it. I mean, the board knows. So one of the things we just approved in our financial consent agenda was the board giving, I guess, really, Ms. Platt, our business official, and the superintendent permission to approve small change orders up to $25,000 in the case of Catherine's approval, and up to $50,000 for Dr. Duffy's approval, and anything over that. And actually, of course, the board will stay informed, and we've been informed and involved, and but it actually just helps things move a lot more quickly. So you're not waiting 2 weeks to get something approved.
Right. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we're moving into new business, is the Committee for Special Education and the Committee for Preschool Special Education recommendations. May we have the recommended action, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And next is the approval to transition our legal counsel to Keene and Bean.
Whereas the Board of Education Board has received notice that several attorneys who have served as counsel to the district through Shaw, Perelson, May, and Lambert LLP will be departing that firm during the period December 31st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. And whereas the board recognizes that under the New York Rules of Professional Conduct, the district has the exclusive right to select its legal counsel and to determine whether to continue representation with Shaw, Perelson, May, and Lambert LLP or transition representation to another counsel. And whereas the board has reviewed its options and determined that it is in the best interest of the district to appoint Keenan Bean PC to serve as legal counsel for the district. And now therefore be it resolved that effective April 1st, 2026, the rights and obligations of Shaw, Harrelson, May, Lambert pursuant to the retainer agreement presently in effect be terminated, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education of the Haldane Central School District hereby appoints Keenan Bean, PC, as legal counsel for the district effective April 1st, 2026, subject to the execution of an engagement letter or retainer agreement in a form acceptable to the superintendent and board president, and be it further resolved that the board authorizes and directs the superintendent and district administration to take all necessary steps to ensure an orderly transition of all relevant legal matters, including the transfer of files, records, and work product from Shaw, Harrelson, May, and Lambert LLP to Keenan Bean PC, consistent with applicable laws, regulations, and professional obligations, and be it further resolved that Shaw, Harrelson, May, and Lambert LLP is thanked for its prior service to the district, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I guess I would just say that, Maggie, Dr. Duffy, and I had a chance, you were there, right? Yeah, had a chance to meet with some representatives, and I can't even remember, sorry. From QB, and had a chance to meet with them and talk with them. And it was a good conversation. I think you had some experience working with them in the past. The person who's been our lead counsel from Shaw is one of the people making this transition. So this provides us with an opportunity to spend a few months working with them. New firm. So like good. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Right. And may we have the next recommended action?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints Keenan Bean PC as special counsel to represent the district in the matter of IHRS case number 665326 during the period through and including March 31st, 2026.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And next, on the agenda, the approval of a non-resident student tuition.
Whereas the Board of Education of the Haldane Central School District provides the opportunity for non-resident students to attend Haldane, and whereas certain non-resident children have successfully applied for non-resident student status, it is hereby resolved that the Board of Education affirms and approves the following child as a student of the Haldane Central School District beginning with the 2026-2027 school year, subject to all the rights, rules, and responsibilities as more fully set forth in the non-resident protocols number 2026-01.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're now at the second opportunity for communication from the public. This is can be addressed all school matters, all school district matters. And sometimes I go too fast.
We'll take more gratitude.
I don't just
I can.
well, any board reflect. Oh, did you?
I just had a question on the consent agenda. You mentioned the appointment of additional spring coaches, and I was just wondering who they were.
That's so it's on. I don't have my
it in front of me,
open, but
yeah.
it's available on board docs. So if you go to the board,
You can access it there.
yeah, you can go to the board site. It'll be there. And board reflections. Well, I want to say, so one of the things I think, just to build on some of the things that were said during the first communication from the public, right? I mean, one of the things that makes Haldane as great as it is oftentimes the partnership between the district and people in the community, right? With, with fundraising and whether it's volunteering in, the play or volunteering to run the concession stand or, but also, in major partnerships to, last year with, our interim superintendent, it was getting some input from the community about applying and thinking, about electric bus funding possibilities, right? So those kinds of, and to hear the enthusiasm to both sort of pursue the grant, but also to help educate the community about the budget is great and something we'll certainly, we appreciate and we'll take under advisement, figure out together. So that's all.
One simple thing, just want to thank Catherine for all the work with the budget.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And to piggyback on your point, it really is, all these are kind of community efforts, right? So, and one of the interesting things about the way that New York State school budgets work is a school can't spend money unless it's approved by its community. It can't raise money, it can't spend money. And so that's that really important interaction between the community and the education of its children, which is absolutely crucial. So thank you for preparing it, and thank you all for your continued support.
Well, this is the time of year when graduating seniors start to think about their internships, if they're going to be doing them or not through Aspire. The organization that I work with has sort of virtually every year had an intern. And if there's anybody who's here tonight, since we have such an audience, who's in a position in their organization to provide that opportunity, it really is gratifying. And it's a wonderful experience, both for the students and for those that get to mentor them and support them. So if you can't, perhaps you know someone who can, but I'm really looking forward to it. So.
Right. Good. Thanks. All right. Dr. Duffy, any final thoughts?
2 thoughts. No more snow, please. Whatever you have in power to help me have no more snow. And then I just wanted to give a shout out to the students that helped plan the Wild Robot experience. Definitely supported by the PTA and our teachers. We had 2 young ladies actually dress as robots and hand out snacks and kind of, at least when I was there at the beginning, really get the crowd excited. So it was really great to see the spirit. And then I just kind of walked into a couple different classrooms and there's a prepared set of questions that everyone had ahead of time, but it was really an authentic discussion on when you think about being in middle school, how you're grappling with, well, who you are, what do you stand for, what's the role of technology, how do you fit in? I think the book really was well timed and just, it opened up avenues for kids to really deeply talk and consider different topics. So I just really appreciated that. And my understanding is this has been part of Haldane for quite some time, the community read. So it's just a wonderful part of our community. I was very happy to be part of it. And then again, to have the kids dressed up as robots singing and handing out snacks, it just made it for a special afternoon.
I think Dr. Selke brought it. I don't know.
I think she inherited it, she said.
She did?
Yeah.
Inherited. It was here when
It
my
was
kids
here
were
for,
here.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Great. Thanks. All right. So with that, I move to adjourn the meeting. May we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.